Annyeong, it's Mikey here, and today I have another budget, full size and a 98% all in one video. It's actually two boards with one video, and Redragon actually sent me out these two boards. So we have the Antonium Pro 108 and the Artemis Pro. Now, we're doing two boards in one video because I felt like it's both from Redragon and it's both supposed to be so-called budget boards in the 98% to full size range. So it would be nicer to do one video with both products, kind of comparing them as well as comparing with other boards instead of doing like multiple videos. So let's go right into the unboxing of both, take a look at them, but please join the Discord. I'll have links in the description and make sure to like and subscribe. Now, starting off with the unboxing of the Artemis and the Antonium Pro. Now, thank you again, Redragon, for setting me out. And we're going to take a look at first the Artemis Pro. Now, this is their anime board, right? So you see the anime girl that's going to be designed on the keycaps and the board itself. Now, let's open the box and take a look. So we're looking at the Artemis Pro, and the first thing I can notice is that the packaging, I'm gonna be honest, kind of looks cheap. And you can see here that like the accessories are kind of all flew around. Now, as you can see there, the cable is a very basic, cheap cable, and it's actually 90 degrees. We're gonna see why very soon, but it also gives you extra switches, so you do get a decent amount of extra switches. I do think that it's nice that they provided that, and of course we're gonna take a look at the board. So as you can see, like, you do get some stickers, you do get a manual, and the board itself is a anime themed board. You do get an LCD screen, so you do have a screen there on the top right, which is, I guess some people might like it, and you do have a volume knob, so you're getting a pretty decent amount of stuff with this board. The USB dongle, or the USB port on this board is actually on the left side, so that's why you need a 90-degree cable. A lot of people are not going to like that. There's a spot for USB dongle, it seems, as well, which is nice. And of course, we're going to weigh the board before going to the next one. And honestly, the design is okay, but definitely not something, in my opinion, what I would enjoy. But, you know, this is 900 grams. Now, going into the Antonium Pro. So this is a full-size board. The Artemis was at 98%. And of course, we're going to take a look. Now, I think in terms of the packaging, the Antonium was a little bit better. It seems like the box is a little bit nicer. But of course, we're going to have to open up to take a look inside and see as well. And the first thing I noticed is, the packaging is not the greatest packaging. It's very bare minimum, as you can see there. And like just the accessories just hanging there inside the box. They just blocked it off with like a cardboard, and as you can see, like a very basic cable as well. You do get a switch puller, keycap puller, but you do get a lot of extra switches, a total of 8. So that's a decent amount of extra switches inside this board. Of course, we're gonna have to really take a look inside the board as well and see what we're getting here. You do get like the stickers, and you get the manual as well. And gonna be honest, again, it's very budget, right? Like this whole packaging feels incredibly budget and not something that I'm like really impressed by. You do have a spot for USB dongle, which is nice. It is a full plastic board as well. And of course, we're going to weigh this board before we go into a sound test. And this thing is going to weigh 1 kilo. So the things that I noticed was that the Artemis does not sound very great. It is a flex cut plate. It's a PC plate. Let me just focus the camera for you guys to see. But yeah, it's flex cut, and honestly, it did not sound very good. The Antonium, on the other hand, actually sounded pretty decent. The switches are pretty quiet. It is more of like a creamier sound. The flex cut on this thing is crazy though. Like, you have flex cuts around the whole switch. So it's not just like in between the rows of the switches, but it's actually around the switches as well. So crazy amount of flex cut. Not something I personally enjoy. That's too much. Now, you do have screws that keeps the board together. It's total 10 screws. That's something I actually do appreciate because it makes it so much easier for me to open it up instead of like normally getting the latches off. The top casing feels really thin and actually feels quite flimsy. The board itself, we're going to really take a look as well. So removing all the cables. And one thing I noticed actually trying to remove the battery is that it feels like it's glued in. So you're not able to pull it out. I'm not sure why it was done that way. It's just a little bit weird. Now, of course, measuring the plate, we're getting 1.2 millimeters in the plate, but the PCB is coming a bit thinner. It looks like it's getting like 0.9 to 1 millimeters instead of 1.2. I'm not too sure, but like taking a look even close to see the difference between the plate and the PCB, the plate does seem to be a little bit thicker and compared to the PCB. As you can notice as well, the PCB is not well cut. I noticed that the cut on the PCB seems to be not the cleanest cut at all. You can see the edges on there, which is quite unfortunate. It just means that it wasn't well done. Now, of course, looking more inside the board, you do get a like static foam sheet underneath the PCB, and then you have a silicone for the bottom of the keyboard. This thing is a 4000 mAh battery as well, and you get one single battery. Of course, we're going to now check out the Antonium. So again, 10 screws, and as you can see there with Antonium, one of the screws is actually hidden underneath the feet, so you're going to have to actually open that up to get the screw. Now, of course, we're going to get out everything, open it up, and take a look. This one feels a little bit better. I'm going to be honest with you. Compared to the Artemis, this one feels like a slightly better build in terms of the quality and in terms of the plastic. But it honestly still feels quite cheap. Now, of course, this one also had the same issue. The battery is not able to be unplugged. It feels like it's actually glued in. I'm not sure why they're doing this. It's really quite unfortunate, and it shouldn't be glued in. Now, of course, taking a look as well, you do get a very rigid foam that's underneath the PCB, and then you have silicone underneath as well in terms of the bottom of the case. You do have a 4000 mAh battery as well. You only get one, so the other side where the second battery technically should be able to go is with a like styrofoam to cover the space. This PCB is also flex cut, so both PCBs are fully flex cut. And in terms of the plate, so we're measuring it out, it's going to be 1.2 millimeters on the plate as well. And then the PCB here, you get 1.2. So this one is getting a proper measurement while the other one was not. Now, going into the stabilizers, they're both plate mounted stabilizers. Now, this is the Artemis, and the lubing on the Artemis was not well done in terms of the stabilizers. You can really see there's like very little lube in there. So we're really going to have to modify this because the spacebar sounded really bad. And as you can see there too, the plate mounted stabilizers are actually moving quite a bit and rattling. The next one is going to be the Antonium. And the Antonium, again, is a plate mounted stabilizer, but this one seems to be better done. The stabilizer is more stable when it is clipped in, and it is better lubed as well, so you can actually see the lube. This one is definitely much more well done in terms of how they did it, and this one even sounded better compared to the Artemis. The Artemis was really bad for the stabilizers. Now the next thing we're going to do is mod them. So I did a 2-layer tape mod on the Artemis. My apologies, I actually forgot to press record when I did it, but I modified there. We're also going to, of course, fix the spacebar. I'm going to add a bit of tape in there because it really did not sound good. The spacebar felt very hollow, very rattling. I mean, to be fair, it's also because the stabilizers, they were not well done in terms of them, and it just didn't sound great. So we're going to add some tape just to help it a little bit. In general, if you have a spacebar that does sound horrible, one of the things you can do is add tape, and it'll help a lot. The next thing I'm going to do is lube up the stabilizers because they just do not sound good. We're going to have to fix it up. These ones are very, very rattling with also like tinging sounds, and I think this will help a lot, but it won't fix the rattling sound because the rattling, it means that the stabilizer is not fully like stuck inside of the plate and it's actually moving around quite a bit. Of course, we're also not going to just do that one. I noticed that a lot of the stabilizers were not good, so I actually have to fix the backspace as well. which is quite unfortunate. It means there's a lot more work that has to be done. This is something that I think really they need to look into, because if they're going to sell a board that is supposed to be like a good sounding board and meant to be something that people would enjoy, this is not the way to do it. I would personally say that this is probably the worst way to do it. You really want to make sure that all the quality is there, and especially considering this price, like the price of this board, they really should have put that work in. And of course, I'll have to go into that later because it's going to shock you. So we put in the lube. Hopefully this helps a lot when we go into the modded sound test. And then I'm going to be actually modifying the Antonium as well. So we're going to go into modifying the Antonium just pretty much the same way that we did the Artemis, which is going to be a 2-layer tape mod. So going underneath, we can take a look to see that this board is pretty good sounding in general. The switches as well were already pretty well lubed. Like the stock lubing was quite well done, though it wasn't like, I would say, same in all switches. This is kind of a quality control issue, but overall it was much better than the Artemis. This still had a little bit of tinging, but it was still better, and it only needs a little bit of that lube. And of course the spacebar, I'm just kind of a little bit of tape just to help with it. I noticed while I was doing this after that I actually mixed up the space-bars, so that's my bad there. I actually grabbed the Artemis spacebar for the Antonium there, and then the Antonium spacebar for the Artemis, which was not the smartest play for me. But of course, we're gonna have to model this. And now let's give you guys a modded sound test. So we have the Artemis Pro and the Antonium Full Size Pro. So it's a full size board. This is a 98% board. And we've done the sound test for both boards, right? So what are my thoughts after the sound test and doing like the teardown and of course doing the modifications? The Artemis Pro is not a good board in terms of the sound. I'm gonna be honest. The stock board out of the box was actually probably really scratchy and loud, and the switches didn't feel that they were well done. It was a very light switch, but the sound like just was not clean, and it felt like it was quite cheap sounding. The Antonium Pro, though, on the other hand, actually sounds pretty decent. It's got more of like a creamier sound. It's quieter as a board, and even without the modifications and just the switches alone, we're actually well done out of the box. They're quite well lubed as well. I was quite surprised, like this one is really nicely sounded, right? If you are someone who's like looking for a budget board that wanted a nice creamy board, like this is something that's possibly good to look at. Of course, we're gonna have to go into a more in-depth look to see like the pricing and everything, but my initial thoughts after doing all that modification wise is, even after the modifications, the Artemis Pro honestly is not standing up to what it should, and especially like with all the looping I did and the tape mods and everything, it's made it better, but it's still quite lacking. It's my opinion. While the Antonium was actually really good, and you really didn't have to modify it, but modifying it does make it sound a bit better and it makes it quieter. Of course, we're gonna have to go more in depth, and let me give you guys more information of these and see, you know, how does this stand up with a lot of the competition. So going into taking a look really inside of these boards and my thoughts. So the Artemis, I'm gonna be honest, it was a very cheap feeling board. I didn't like the USB port placement on the left side. It's just very weird. The flexing on this board is not the best. It's very loud as well in terms of the board, and each switch rattles really badly. It's almost like the rattling sound of like magnetic switches when it comes back up, and you can even hear the plastic. It really feels like a very cheap board, and it feels like the thing that's carrying this board is pretty much the fact that it is this like anime style keycaps and design in the back of the board, which in my opinion doesn't make a board worth more money at all. That shouldn't be something that becomes like a thing that, oh, because we did this, this is why we're going to charge you more. It does have an like a screen on the top right with a volume knob, and the screen is pretty decent. Honestly, reminds me a lot of like the Vibe 99 screen, which is okay. It gives you the battery life, gives you like time, date, even though the time was wrong right there. I would say that it's decent, right? You have a screen which some people might like, but it doesn't mean that this board becomes pricier just because it has it. I think that's not something going to be justifiable. We're going to check the Antonium as well, and I think the Antonium is a little bit better. It kind of has more things to it, right? You have the switches more in a reachable spot on the top compared to like the Artemis, which is on the sides, and you have Windows Mac mode, and it's like much easier to use. The USB dongle is also easier to pick up from the top, while the Artemis is like all on the sides. The build quality of this one feels a little bit better. It still feels like a cheap plastic, feels a little bit thin and not on the premium side or a good quality plastic. But I have to admit that the switches actually sound really good in this. This one was more well done because you actually get more of a creamy sound, and you can use this in an office space, which would be fine. The Artemis really is not meant for like work use or just at home use, pretty much. It's what it's meant for. And, you know, being able to game with both of them, the Artemis didn't feel great gaming at all, even though the switches were a much lighter feel to them. The Artemis had a bit more of a heavier typing feel. Sorry, the Antonium had a bit more of a heavier typing feel. I just think that the Artemis is like, yeah, cool. They have a good quality image done, but it's lacking in so much more than just what I saw. Right? It's just a visual thing, but not a quality thing. The Antonium, on the other hand, it really felt like they put a little bit more work into wanting to build a nice sounding, feeling keyboard, and I appreciated that. There are certain aspects there where I felt like the mid switch felt good, didn't really have that much stem wobble, sounded really nice. It even came stock lubed, and the stock lubing was actually really decent. Like these switches, you don't actually have to hand lube them. They do come really decently done, and you can see there the stem wobble is not that bad. It's gonna be slight more vertically, but horizontally it's not too bad. And as you saw, these are south-facing LEDs. The Artemis comes with our hi-fi switch, which is, I guess, more of like a higher pitch sound as well. The switches do feel like the housing's a little bit cheap, and you could really hear there that the switches have that rattling on the top end. The top end really does have a lot of shaking and wobble, and then on the bottom end it's not that bad. So when it's pressed down, it's not too bad actually, but it's just that top end that really affects the quality of it and the sound quality of it. In terms of, say, the LEDs, they are north facing, which, you know, a lot of people will prefer compared to south facing and have a little bit more of a clear look and brightness. But of course, we're gonna have to go into a brightness test to really see how that is, and, you know, is it gonna be good, and are you someone that's gonna enjoy using this? So let's go into turning off the lights and dimming them to give you guys a better look at the backlight. So as you can see, we're slowly turning off the lights, and you can kind of see already how the Antonium is a lot brighter than the Artemis. So even though it's north facing, the lighting is quite dim. And this is at the max brightness, right? Like I'm showing you guys, even with the brightness going up and down, it's not a bright keyboard at all. I think it's due to the keycaps. The keycaps, by the way, you can actually see the light shine through them. So the keycaps aren't even on the thicker side. They're quite thin, and it's not meant to be a shine through keycap, yet it has the light shining kind of through them, which is not great. And even then it's still dark. And because of the keycaps, the lighting, even though I put it on as white, comes out as like a pinkish color, and that's due to just like a lot of factors that put it together. Really does not make a nice accurate color. The Antonium, on the other hand, is super bright. Like this is a very, very bright board. They did a great job in terms of making sure the lighting came through nicely, and the keycaps aren't going to be making it dim or affecting it. So I would say in terms of the backlighting, if you really do enjoy bright backlighting, the Antonium is going to be a much better choice compared to the Artemis. They did a much better job with this, and I was trying to do a little bit more change in the color scheme. Unfortunately, some of that functions weren't working there. Now, going into taking a look at the actual website. So the Antonium is a $65 keyboard. That's, I would say, better in terms of the pricing compared to this. The Artemis is $90. Like, this is not a price that is justifiable at all. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Kind of disappointed how they priced this, especially with the build quality that came out of it. I do understand that the design is probably costly, right? Making this kind of design, having the screen with the GIF and everything available, but that still doesn't justify a not well built keyboard. You saw there the USB spot, like the USB port, and yeah, unfortunately, with 4,000 mAh battery, tri-mode, and having that kind of sound, this price is just not justifiable anymore. Not in the current market, right? We're in a market now where it's so saturated. There's so many boards out there that you could probably spend less money and then buy yourself a different cheap keyboard, like cheaper, change the switches or even change the keycaps to have this kind of anime design to it than buying this board. The Antonium, on the other hand, is more justifiable. 65 USD is actually cheaper than a lot of the budget boards and like full-size boards that I've tried, and this one still sounded decent out of the box. This now actually matches more with the current market. You do have only a 4,000 mAh battery, which is quite unfortunate. It's not that large of a battery size, but the sound is really decent on this board. It does work well for gaming as well. Of course, we're going to have to check out the software now, which I'm going to show you guys first where to download it. So you're going to have to go into software. You can actually search up the board that you have to be able to download the software. Overall, going through the website, I felt like it was a little bit of a glitchy and buggy. I actually had a point where the site wasn't working at all. But you can search up the board you have here, and it does come up really easily. And you can just pick the board you have, download the software, and works for anything you have from Redragon. But this is the software for the Antonium, and it's kind of not the best software. It's kind of hard to try like the function tabs and like function layers to really see what's what. They really should have separated it out. I know that this is a skinned software, and it's not the worst software, but to be fair, it's not a great software either. The fact is you're going to have a hard time trying to set up your function layers. Even I couldn't get it properly going. And overall, like to make any changes in this board, you always have to save it. If you don't press save, it actually doesn't show on your board right away, or it won't show at all. And even the lighting, it's nice that it shows the lighting, like how it should look on your board, but it won't show on your board until you press save. That's the biggest thing. You have to press save or it doesn't actually get loaded into the keyboard, which is quite unfortunate. This is something that, I would want to see both on my board and the screen, not just see it on the screen and then press save and then look at it after. You do get macros available, so some people might enjoy that. But again, the software is very, very meh at most. Now you can see the Artemis software is going to be what we look at next. And the things that I noticed with the Artemis software, I actually have to download both, so it doesn't work with one software. They're actually two separate softwares, and that's why I had a hard time opening it, because I had to make sure I got the right one. But the Artemis software is kind of worse. It actually doesn't have like any layering. You don't know which layers you're working with. You have to like click on a button and then click underneath there to really click and see what you're going through. The lighting as well, like you don't see anything. It's a software that unfortunately I think is even worse than what the Antonium was. It's harder to use. It's not user friendly. At the end of the day, what's important with the software is not even about like the amount of customizations you can do. It's about how user friendly is it, because at the end of the day, you don't have customers that are always like very good at using technology or softwares. You're gonna have to consider like a big range, and at the end of the day, what you're ever taught in terms of like doing sales or like trying to get information to someone or teach someone is pretty much treat it like they know nothing, like literally like you're teaching a baby. That's how simple these things should be. But as you can see here, it's quite complicated. You have to go through so many different things, so many different clicks just to see where you're going and what you're going to be using. This is not good, honestly. Please fix this. Go with VIA. Why can't they just go with VIA? It would make their lives easier, make everyone's lives easier if they just did that instead of going with mediocre software. This is something that I really wish more companies would look into and consider. Now, of course, going into the keyboard inspector, we are going to get 1,000 polling rate for the Artemis. So the Artemis is getting 1,000 polling rate, and I tried gaming with it latency wise. Yeah, I didn't really have any issues with it or input lag. Same thing goes for the Antonium, but the Artemis just did not feel great in terms of gaming, and the Antonium felt a little bit better. Like, I think if we look at the Antonium, you're getting quite a decent deal with it, while the Artemis is kind of lacking in terms of the two. I really will want to go into depth with you guys. Like, as you can see, the Artemis also has like a shaky volume knob. I really want to go in and give you guys a sound test comparing other boards, and also just information of the boards to show you what is really worth it. So coming back from like the comparison sound test, these are the boards I want to compare it with, and let's start with the Artemis. 90 USD, Antonium 65 USD, both 4,000 mAh batteries, and both tri-mode with 1,000 polling rate. They are not bad, like in terms of the Antonium, right? You're looking at a decent price with a decent sound, while the Artemis, we're going to remove this from the choices, to be honest with you. At that price range, I'm not going to be able to justify even saying it's decent to look at. So this one we will skip, right? If we just look at the price range, it's higher than the Vibe 99, which I think the build quality wise, the Vibe 99 is going to be a little bit better done. And the sound wise, it's going to sound nicer too. It's also a 4,000 mAh battery, so it's not a large battery. And you're getting a better board with it at a cheaper price. I mean, it's not much cheaper, but at least it's still cheaper with something better. If you really compare the other boards, right, you have the IF99, 101, so this one's like $12 more, and I think this is still a better choice, right? You are missing some of the keys, but have a much better build, have a larger battery life, and it's only $12 more, and it's a much nicer build quality. And you also have VIA. That's going to be way better to use. You also have the F108 Pro, which we're going to look into, and that's $99 or $100. At $100, yes, you're spending $10 more, and you still have a lot more choices and a better built board. Yes, there's certain flaws with it, right, with the volume knob, and it still has a screen though, and it's still technically much more better value. The TH108, close, it's like pretty much the same price, but you get a bigger battery life, and it's still a better build with better sound, with better switches in it. Now, when you compare it with like the Artemis, yeah, the Artemis is not even one that you should look or consider. But the Antonium, on the other hand, is a cheaper board. Yes, the build quality is a little bit cheaper, software still kind of sucks, but at least the value that you're getting at the price is much better. They do have like that discount code there, which is really nice, so you can save some money. I would say this one, like if you're looking at saving money, right, that's all that matters to you, but you still want a decent sounding board, this is something that you could definitely take a look at more. I would think that this one, they priced a lot more reasonable and built actually a decent board. What are my final thoughts in terms of these two boards in my review? The Artemis Pro is not worth it. And I'm going to be honest with that in what I'm saying, because it feels like a very cheap board. It sounds like a very cheap board, but the price is not a cheap board. Like the price of the Artemis Pro is quite close to what the competitors are, and the competitors are making much nicer quality boards out there. I'm very sorry that I'm being honest about this, but this is my honest opinion. This board is not worth what you have to pay for it. Yes, it has like the designs of like the character and the anime, but that's not what a board's all about. Like, you're not spending your money just to get these kind of designs. You can just buy keycaps for that. What you're getting here is like a cheap board, cheap sounding board, when for that price you should be getting a nice sounding board that has a build quality that stands up and, you know, can beat the competitors and is able to do much more than that. Like, it's something that really should be looked into, and I think they need to really reconsider what they're pricing this at. In my honest opinion, for this board to be worth it, it has to be about $30 to $40. That's just my honest opinion. That's where this one stands. The Antonium, on the other hand, this board is cheaper than the Artemis Pro, yet it comes with a much better quality board. You're getting a nicer sound, better switch. That's kind of crazy, isn't it? Right? When you consider it, this thing is at least like 20% cheaper than the Artemis, and it sounds much nicer. I would say this one might be closer to what's worth it, right? Comparing it to the competitors, like, you're getting a decent value for what you're paying. And if you are someone who wants a quieter board, this is something definitely that would be better for you than, say, some of the other competitors that I've shown you guys, because their switches are going to be a bit louder and the boards will be louder. I would say out of the two, this is going to be more worth it. Is this super, super worth it? I think it depends on the person and how much they can grab it for. If it's on a sale, definitely this could be something you could check out. But at regular price, I might shell out a little bit extra money for something more. But that's just my personal choice, right? I think I like a board that's a little bit louder. This board, it sounds pretty good. You do have like a lot of flex cuts, which is just not my personal preference. And overall, it's not like it's got a lot of flex, even though it has the flex cuts. So I'll have the links in the description. You guys can check out both boards for yourself. I would say this one probably a better choice to check out than the other. And of course, go join my Discord if you have any questions, and check out the other videos I got, and I'll have to catch you guys next time.